Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 199 of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography. The great jazz trumpeter, Miles Davis. I saw an interview with him not too long ago, and he said in this interview, sometimes you have to play a long time to be able to play like yourself. Sometimes you have to play a long time to be able to play like yourself. If I think back on my years of teaching photography, one of the most consistent questions that I get from students is this one: how do I develop my own style, my own sense of photographic style? And I suppose some of the impetus for this question comes from the bombardment of the internet, videos and Instagram and Flickr, and the whole panoply of ways that we learn about photography now. And a lot of the time, the word style has come to mean a certain combination of Lightroom presets or application of Photoshop layers or Instagram filters or something. And it's certainly one of the things that I see an awful lot as I look around the world of the internet. People describing, this is my style, and the style is just the look of those pictures. But what does style really mean? So when students ask me that question, the answer I usually give, at least at first, is it will come in time. It will come with time. Because what I know is that what a photographer's style comes from is really the application of a long period of time of practice, experimentation, failure, success, more failure, then, rinse and repeat. And of course, I do help students in a more concrete way, helping them come to a sense of their own style and their own way of going about practicing photography that is uniquely their own. And I try to help them by asking, at first, a lot of questions not necessarily about photography, but about themselves. What do they value? What moves them? What do they see every day that they treasure the look of? I tell them that, at least in part, the answer to the question of style, to the question of photographic self, is inside of them and not in any practical application of photographic technique. And as you might expect, especially in today's sped up world, and the fact that we want gratification as soon as possible, there are a lot of students that aren't happy with those questions, that aren't happy that I'm asking them to respond to these deeper questions about their own sense of value, their own sense of self, and what it is that they value in life. And those answering those questions takes too long and bears a little too much of the self, perhaps. And so they're not that happy with that. And of course, then they still, fall back to the technology part of photography and say, well, isn't photography partly about the machines and the techniques and the software and the darkroom processes and the lenses and the camera types and so forth and so on? And I said, yes, it is. But, if you want to try and hide out there to say that style can be found in a lens or a printing method is kind of a dodge, kind of a little bit of a sidestep around the question. And it certainly bears mentioning that certainly many photographers' styles are built on a combination of vision and what it is that they make the photograph look like in post production. But here's another quote from Miles Davis from that same video. And by the way, I'll link that video in the cameraposition.com blog and in the app and all the other places that you all can find those things. And it's a great video. It's about 6 minutes long, well worth your time. But here's another quote that he has in this video, and he says, "In order to become a musician, you have to learn a bunch of cliches. If you pick up an instrument and you learn it, these cliches, these little melodies that you heard, will come out in that instrument." Man, doesn't that sound like the way in which many of us learn photography by, and in fact, a method I think is a really good way of learning photography, looking at the work of photographers that you like and trying to dissect what's going on in those pictures. This is why photographers, or really any other creative person, Photographers have to be aware of what others have done before them and what others are doing right at the same time that they're doing it. If you have a topic or a theme that you want to photograph, it makes sense to do that research on what others have said about that theme. And what they've said might appear in photographs or in words or in paintings or in music or in movies, everything. You research every possible aspect of the topic, of the theme that you're interested in articulating, and see what happens once you have all of those, as Miles Davis would put it, cliches tucked under your belt. And like Davis would say, if you learn all those cliches, you'll start to see them coming out in your photographs. And in time, you'll have a hard time recognizing which thing was your own and which one came from the people you'd looked at for inspiration. And you'll begin to riff on those inspirational melodies and make them your own. So, that idea of style, and going back to Miles Davis, sometimes you have to play a long time to be able to play like yourself. So keep practicing, keep succeeding, keep failing. Another great quote from Miles Davis: do not fear mistakes, there are none. So I'll leave you with that. And one last thing, if you're listening, especially listening through the podcast app and on the Apple universe, if you would be so kind as to go into iTunes and leave a review, even if it's just leaving some stars for the podcast, but even better, writing a quick little review. That would be so helpful to build our listening base up a little bit and get a bigger community of folks who are interested in the same sorts of things that we're interested in. Thanks again, and I look forward to talking with you on the next episode of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography.